All right.
Whatever.
All right. Hey, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is an amazing way for you to exit highly appreciated cryptocurrency, business, real estate, primary homes, GP/LP interest, save a failed 1031 exchange so you can create and preserve more wealth. Hey, we're also streaming on expert CRE secrets as well, by the way. So we welcome all of the listeners and viewers there on YouTube. And for those who don't know me, my name is Brett Swarts, and I'm the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, and I'll be your host today. And each episode, we typically bring on some of the best in real estate, crypto, business, and leadership minds, where they share their deal stories, inspiration, and wisdom with us. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. Hey, I'm excited about our next guest. He's currently in Raleigh, North Carolina. He's currently the chief executive officer of Robert Ventures, with over 20 years of asset management experience. Over the last 10 years, he was the CEO of Silver Bay Capital, a real estate asset management company that invested in over 200 residential and commercial properties and over 165 million in AUM of residential mortgages, creating double-digit predictable returns and so much more. Please welcome to the show with me, Joe Robert. Joe, how are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing great. I don't think anybody has given me that intro like that lately, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a great episode, because there's not a lot of people that have the cryptocurrency kind of acumen as well as the real estate acumen. And so combining those two, I think, is so powerful in today's world for uncertainty in cryptocurrency and the certainty of commercial real estate. So we're going to dive into that secret here. But before we go there, Joe, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah, so a little bit about myself, to break that down. I mean, in high school, take it back then, I focused on doing construction work. And ultimately, what that led me to do after I graduated was to buy my first piece of real estate at the age of 19. This was approximately 2001. I bought that property, fixed it up, lived in there, and then sold it tax-free after the 2-year mark. You know, as we're on the episode today about saving taxes, that's one way to do it, obviously. You could buy a primary residence, live there for 2 years, and resell it for certain tax exemptions. And from there, I just continued to invest in real estate for the decade through the 2000s. And then we had the real estate crash that slowed things down. And what came after that was me investing in flip property I was flipping. And my private lender said he was moving his money over to another area. And I was paying on 15% at that time. And I was like, wow. He's like, yeah, but I could get 18% over here. And that was investing in distressed mortgages. And so what that led me to do was start showing up at those meetings and learning about that. And that led me and another partner to start buying distressed mortgages that were originated from the 2000 subprime era.
Excellent. Fantastic. Love that background in the distressed mortgage as well as real estate and construction and crypto. I mean, even more here. So very cool. Hey, Joe, before we dive into the kind of the secret there to investing in crypto and real estate and kind of combining the two, I do want to take one other step back, Joe. I believe we've all been given certain gifts, and these gifts to be a blessing and help to others. So go back to the high school days, right? I'm curious, what are the one or two gifts you believe you were given, and how does that help how you help and bless people today?
The gifts I've been given, I would say to be maybe contrarian. Is that a gift? Be contrarian. You know, growing up, I was definitely different from my siblings, where I always went in a different direction. In high school, I didn't want to participate really in school. So one way to get out of that was actually go to the tech school across the street for contracting. And that got me out for about half the day in my 11th, 12th grade. And so obviously that led me to doing real estate later. And so being the contrarian and going in different direction and not listening to the crowd, we'll call it, because back then also is when they were kind of preaching that 9 to 5 a lot more than you see today. You know, when we, at that point, there's only a handful of us that were entrepreneurs or what we called self-employed. And it's really only in the service business. It wasn't all this internet stuff available. And so that's where I put that.
I absolutely love that, being contrarian and going against the grain and going to the tech school across the street, so much so that it's helped create the entrepreneur spirit in you. Love that. Great. Let's jump right into. So like, what's the number one secret to, investing in crypto and real estate and just like kind of the tax strategies that you found in your investing and how you've helped your clients or partners.
Yeah, so let's hit on real estate first, right? For what has worked for me and some of the biggest lessons, right? Because that's important in life. Let's start with the biggest lessons. So in 2000s, investing in real estate, the biggest lessons I learned was that not to buy too many properties that are only land and have loans and be over leveraged when it comes to real estate correction, right? And so my takeaway was don't over leverage, have cash flow that services your debt. But more importantly, what worked for me too is playing the different cycles, right? There's great opportunity when it comes to timing the market and when to buy and when to sell. And so after that 2000s period, the 2000, let's call it 11 to 2015 is when we were starting to buy a lot of real estate and distressed mortgages, and then ultimately exited around 2018 to 2020. And so timing the market is definitely one thing that's worked for me.
Excellent. So, by the way, you can find more about Joe Robert at joerobert.com. That's joerobert.com. So, knowing what market cycle you're in, and don't over leverage and buy maybe non-cash flowing producing like land, for example, or whatever asset that might be, and make sure that the cash flow can service the debt. Is that a fair summary so far?
That's great.
What's number two?
I would say, one thing that was never taught when we were younger was definitely obviously the compound effect, but also, minimizing your tax bill along the way when you exit these deals. And so in 2014, about the springtime, I mentioned to my lawyer, hey, is any of this offshore tax havens legal or legitimate? There's a lot of stuff with Obama trying to crack down, and I didn't really know. He's like, look, you typically got to be a resident of the area, and you also, you got to be a resident there and live there full time. He's like, I heard something about Puerto Rico. And so what did I do? I naturally went home, I Googled it, and started finding out the information. At that time, it's called Act 22. And that's fall. I flew down there, I booked an apartment and decided I was going to move down there. And this was one great way to participate, obviously, in the tax benefits that they had, but also live in a warmer climate and be by the beach and make a different move in life. Again, the contrarian, right? Everyone's kind of residing at home, and I decided to go down to Puerto Rico.
Fantastic. And by the way, for those who aren't familiar with Act 22, could you just give a quick breakdown? And by full time, do you mean like 187 days, or are you meaning 365 days? What do you mean by that, Joe?
I would say typically you should not be living on the edge, and everything should look and smell like your primary residence, your doctors. You go and visit there. Your driver's license, your voting card, your where you do business, and everything should be located there. Obviously, each year needs to be over 183, but I would never be cutting the line because you'd be living there. So it doesn't hurt to be off the island a few months to go and take care of whatever you like to do. But again, while you're a resident, you want to be there. And that goes the same when you're playing in the States. If you want to move from New York or California down to Florida, you want to be a resident, your family go there, the doctors, everything.
Yeah, do it legit, right? And then now, what the quick tax benefits of Puerto Rico, right? Talk about cap gains tax, talk about income tax. Like, what's so amazing about Act 22?
Yeah, so for us, it's capital gains tax is taxed at 0% for most assets. That's typically your securities, your investments, your cryptocurrencies, not U.S. related real estate, but also does include Puerto Rico real estate. It also includes if you want to exit the sale of your company, that'd be a capital gain event. And at that point, depending on when you purchase the asset and how many days you own the asset while residing in Puerto Rico, that would kind of determine if you would pay the 0% on all of it or a portion of it.
So let's walk through that, right? So I bought some cryptocurrency, some Bitcoin in California, and it was pennies on the dollar, and it's worth 50 million bucks now. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to move to Puerto Rico for a year or two and then start selling. Walk us through how you might, I know it's not legal tax advice, but would this be, what's kind of the thought on that? Like, maybe not for you, but for somebody else. Like, what would someone say about that?
Well, how I would interpret it, and obviously, like you mentioned, every lawyer or CPA might have a different opinion, but the simplest way I would put this is, let's say January 21st, 2021, you buy that $1 million worth of Bitcoin, and let's say at the end of 22, it doubles, and then you moved January 1st, 2022. So basically, you lived 1 year or 50% of the time US stateside while you owned it, and then you were 50% of the time in Puerto Rico. Well, in theory, your gain of that $1 million should be allocated appropriately, about 50% of the time you reside in the US, and then 50% of the time in Puerto Rico under the 0%.
Okay, yeah. So it's just a simple ratio. So if it went from 1 to 2 million in 1 year, and that 1 year you had moved halfway in between, you would say 50% California, 50% Puerto Rico. Is that a fair summary?
That's fair. And it's over a few years. You were owned it 2 years in the US and then 1 year in Puerto
Right.
Rico. Then you probably take 2/3 and allocate to the US side. And, obviously check with
Yeah,
CPA.
check your CPA. It's legal tax advice. But yeah, that's just kind of the strategy. So Act 22 is pretty awesome. Now, that being said, you're now perhaps either visiting or co-residing in North Carolina. Who are you rooting for these days? Is it Duke? Is it Tar Heels? NC State? Like, who you rocking here?
Well, back to the contrarian thing, right? I guess I would circle back. That's the word of the day. I never really was a sports fan. And even in Philadelphia, every time I move, someone's like, well, who's your favorite Philadelphia team? I don't really care. I focus on work and other things. I'm not a sports fan. Um, so that I just don't have a team.
That's cool. That's all good. That makes sense. We don't have to even go there. So but moving to what you most like about Puerto Rico? What did you least like, and why in North Carolina now?
Great. So I spent about the fall of 2014 to the beginning of 19, about 4.5 years there. While I was there, what I loved was definitely the welcoming people. In one aspect, we'll call it's a little bit more relaxed atmosphere, which is good in one part, but another part maybe a little too slow pace if you're used to the Northeast. Um, the weather was great all year round. And the other people you got to meet while on the island was awesome, right? Because there's a lot of other people there for the ACT program, and therefore you can make connections quick, and that was kind of awesome.
To that point, right? You met a lot of people in the Bitcoin, Ethereum, or other blockchain type of assets, and now you're in ownership and millionaires, maybe billionaires, and now you're interviewing a lot on, I think, on your podcast and what you're doing. So walk us through that transition of heavy real estate now into crypto, and maybe some of the top secrets you've learned about investing into cryptocurrency with a real estate mindset.
So, as I mentioned, market cycles very important to investing, at least in my career, right? Some might say always invest. I like to kind of look at the market cycles and buy when there's more of a distressed opportunity, right? And so we made that move in 2014 to Puerto Rico. And while we're there, we established relationships with the banks. We're able to buy distressed assets from the banks there. And then 2017 came, and we started meeting some people in the crypto space, and through local parties. And what happened was, at first I was like, nah, don't want to get distracted, right? And then just kind of hung out more often, and then realized what's happening, and how it's emerging tech, right? And maybe because I came from the real estate side, I was more intrigued by this side because I've never really been exposed to the technology aspect. And so the fall of 2017, started investing just kind of myself and getting to understand it. And then in 2018, we took it a little more seriously. I hired a couple guys, and then we started investing in some new projects. And then for the last, I guess, call it 4 or 5 years now, we've been mostly managing a portfolio of liquid tokens. And then we also have 20-30% of our book that we invest into other funds to get exposure into areas that we don't follow because the space is becoming kind of broad. So similar to real estate, the crypto market definitely historically has worked in cycles, right? Boom and bust cycles, where there's a better time to acquire assets and there's also a better time to exit. And do not ever marry your positions, whether you're in real estate or anything that may be, because certain things change along the way and you need to be able to sell and not be married to that position. So what has worked well here on the crypto side was buying in 2017, 2018, probably near the top on a small portion, learning a little bit, taking a little bit of losses, but then ultimately between 18, 19, and 20, buying other tokens and then exiting a portion at this cycle. And then again, over the next 24 months, that's the same thing we're going to be looking to do.
What do you think of the state of cryptocurrency right now with Celsius and the things that have just completely been upside down and people losing a lot, right? What's your take on that? And what are you doing to make sure that you're protecting your assets and your investments in the future?
Well, it's always unfortunate when anybody loses money, right? Uh, that's one part. The other part is I think it's kind of the natural evolution of any good investor to lose money, because it's the lessons learned that makes you stronger as you move along. So while we don't want to see anyone lose money, I think it just naturally occurs, and that's how people get better at the game. And that also watches weak players, we'll call them, or people that are not going to last long out of the system. What was that second one?
No, I was just saying that this the kind of the state of where we're at now. Like, are you, the cycles, the whole thing about the cycles and things have, hit hard, but Ethereum's on a tear right now, right in the last month. We're recording this August the 8th of 2022. And we're looking at, Ethereum maybe for the first time taking over the coveted spot of Bitcoin. I mean, there's rumors, there's whispers of this, right? If you say it too loud, right, it might change some things. And by the way, I invest into Ethereum, and I have my kids and my wife. We have some Ethereum mines in our house. Like we're helping people exit cryptocurrency and defer millions of tax and get out high before they get hammered using the Deferred Sales Trust. But now, I mean, I'm looking at it. It's we're at 1,700 right now, and it's the last month alone, it's up approximately 42%, right? So I'm just curious on your take overall with where we're at with investing, and maybe perhaps some of the coins that you're investing in.
Well, how I look at this is, again, back to the cycle theory, right? And it's hard to time exact tops and bottoms. And I don't think anyone should really attempt to do that. So at this point, I see that we're kind of, we'll call it a treading along the bottom. Whether we go down 50% more or go up double, I think we're somewhat, my opinion, is somewhat sideways the next year or so. And that's going to give time to people to accumulate. I always say it's always best to dollar cost average in some aspect into the projects that you believe will do very well on the next cycle over the next 3 to 5 years. What we're looking at is typically right now in this timing, we're looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then we're looking at some of the layer one projects, obviously like Solana and Polygon. And then we're going to start looking at some of the layer twos for Ethereum, because we think kind of Ethereum and its merge is a catalyst. And then we think there's going to probably be like a layer two season where like optimism would probably play. And that's where we're starting right now. And then those are our picks for the next year. And then probably after that, depending on where Bitcoin's price is at, and if it starts moving up to 30, 50K, then we'll probably maybe go a little bit more on the risk curve towards gaming assets.
Excellent. And so, and by the way, you can find more about Mr. Joe Robert at joerobert.com, joerobert.com, and he's the founder of Robert Ventures. So what is Robert Ventures? Maybe just so we know, right? How does someone want to work with you, Joe, if they want to connect with you? Like what does that look like?
I mean, right now they can, as you mentioned, they could subscribe to joerobert.com for digital asset news insights. That's each week we cover what's happening in the market. We just added on some custom analytics there where we're looking at certain projects. And from an investment standpoint, anyone who wants to talk to me directly, they can book at robertventures.com and, discuss working with us here in the future. Currently, we don't have anything available, but here in the next couple of months, we're going to be having something available.
Excellent. And by that, you mean investing into crypto or real estate or both?
Yeah, well, that's what we're kind of looking at what the market wants and what's going to be available, because I think some of the opportunity is starting to show through here, but hasn't shown all the way.
That makes sense. So it's like this. It's like kind of like the pause before the storm, and you're ready to get into. I love it. So by the way, Joe, I want to shift a little bit to frustrations with capital gains tax deferral and cryptocurrency. I think this is important to talk about. A few minutes ago, I mentioned our client. They exited. There's two of them actually. One had 50,000 of Bitcoin, then went to 50 million. Lived in California, wasn't ready to move to Puerto Rico. Was working for one of the big tech companies. And at 54,000 a coin, she exited 5 of the 50 million into the Deferred Sales Trust, deferred about 1.8 million in tax, and was able to diversify that into some liquid stocks, bonds, and not bonds, but liquid stocks, and then into like a business venture, like a Khan Academy type of startup company. And happy she did, because obviously Bitcoin went very low, and now she's diversified a bit. And then we had another one who bought Ethereum for about $100,000 and it went to $13.5 million. Okay, and they were able to exit about $7.5 million, defer all the tax, and they happened to be at Celsius too, right? And then everything hit the fan, and so I called him up and said, "Hey, how'd you do?" He's like, "Well, I'm probably losing $1 million at Celsius. We'll see if we get the money back or not. I'm not counting on it, but we might." I go, "But had you not done the deferred sales trust, how much would you have lost?" He goes, "Oh man, probably 30%." 30% of my my 13.5 million. So my thought for you, Joe, is, what's the biggest frustration that you've seen with capital gains tax deferral when it comes to cryptocurrency and, maybe not wanting to move to Puerto Rico and wanting to be able to time these market cycles?
I think one of the frustrations would be that you're going to have to pay tax and therefore you don't sell your positions, right? Sometimes people are making investment moves based on their tax strategies and not based on when it's best to enter and exit out of the market, right? And so I know even some people that didn't exit from a tax standpoint, but ultimately had lost a lot more in portfolio, percentage wise.
Absolutely, right? I mean, and we call it letting the tax tail wag the timing dog. Like, I would imagine there's a lot of people would say, "Can I defer, my taxes on the sale of my Bitcoin, capital gains tax in a legal way with, that's been proven and that's worked and that's actually being done, versus, just holding on." In fact, the one client who did 50,000 to 50 million, we exited at 54,000 a coin. Went to 60 and 65,000 a coin. And I said, "Hey, we can exit some more. We can exit some more." She goes, "No, I'm going to keep waiting, right? Long term, and by the way, bigger since she hadn't even sold before. She had never sold a single Bitcoin, right? From 50,000 to 50 million. And she said, because I believe in the long-term future, but number one. Number two, the tax was so big. And number three, I didn't have a great place to put it into until I had a business venture with a partner of mine. And so we ended up making sense of the deferred sales trust, but they don't have that clear exit plan, right? And they don't have that flexibility. And we do solve that, by the way. If people want to learn more about that, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can check out the Deferred Sales Trust, and you can hear and see all of that. But I mean, I'm curious, Joe. You've been in some tax strategies in real estate, and of course, done 1031 exchanges, right? What is your take when you've done 1031 exchanges, right? And what would it mean if you could have a 1031 exchange for cryptocurrency?
Man, I mean, we kind of did a few years ago. I think it was before 2018 until they kind of nipped that in the butt. But I think, having a 1031 exchange framework around crypto obviously would be very beneficial, especially if you could, include stable coins in that, right? So you could actually exit your certain positions into stable coins and still be considered a 1031.
Right. So again, little self plug here too. So with the deferred sales trust, you can sell, defer the tax, and check it out, Joe. The money can go into real estate ventures with you, passive or actively, right? So you can exit the crypto, defer the tax, and then the funds in the trust can go into an LLC, which can go into business ventures, development deals. To me, this is awesome, right? Because I had a client, he exited a business at 2.6 million, and he wanted to build 72 multifamily units. And so he was able to do that tax deferred by exiting the business with the deferred sales trust. So it's kind of like a 1031 exchange. I mean, it's not perfect, right? 1031 is like kind for like kind, 45 180. But the ability to get into the real estate game, all tax deferred with the money, is a powerful way. And so that being said, are you still buying real estate right now? What's your and if you were to buy real estate, do you feel like it's going to be multifamily? Is it going to be in North Carolina? What are you looking at?
I mean, the only stuff I have going on, I'm calling around, but I'm just not seeing the opportunities I would like to see, put it that way. And I'm still not seeing quite the cracks to really understand where that opportunity lays in the next couple of years. I'm kind of in the position that real estate's going to correct quite a bit over the next year or two, and that ultimately we may have a somewhat flattish period, at least for years to come. Because I think, just over the last couple of years, the run up is going to take time to kind of deflate and then consolidate, and maybe in the next 5 years not much happens because the prices are pretty high, I still think.
And then you're saying that when you say real estate, do you mean like residential versus like multifamily?
I think all of it.
All of it. Just in general, you feel like it's all kind of been high and it's gonna recorrect and kind of settle down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
Yep.
that's my position. I know everyone over the last years, and that's kind of contrarian. Everyone's talking about this supply and demand problem
Mhm.
continuously, but I think that also only makes sense if there's 2.5% interest rates and certain things. If economy slows or there's less jobs, that changes that demand side.
Mhm.
And I think everyone's on that same side of trade. I think there's a more correction to happen here, and like I said, not much is going to happen in the next few years.
Awesome. Right on. You ready for the lightning round?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Knowing what you know now, know what you know now, Joe. If you go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget and make sure to tell yourself to do?
The one thing would be think way bigger and figure out how to scale up to do a lot bigger projects because it's all pretty similar.
What's the number one way you figured out a way to scale?
Is by just knowing those bigger deals are out there and raising more capital.
What's the number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
Jeez, I'm not a book reader.
What's the number one podcast or YouTube channel that you've recommended or watched the last year?
I would say lightning round. I'm not doing great on the lightning round, huh? The all-in pod that's going recently. That's pretty good, right?
Okay. Yeah. All in pod. That's cool. What's the number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Man, you have hard questions for me today. Number one, leadership. Mine is like do unto others as you want done on yourself.
Love it. What are you most curious about right now, Joe?
I am most curious about kind of living longer.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I just hit 40 a week ago. Even though it's still young, you start realizing your active years, 20, 30 years out, and you're seeing people pass away quite a bit, within my family or friends and whatever, or even people in their 30s and 40s having illnesses or cancer. And you're like, wow, like I'm just realizing we don't have that much time per se left. And, what do I really want to do? And how can I be in better health?
Love it. Last question, Joe. And you've been an awesome guest. After all your success, helping all the people you've helped, investing in crypto and real estate and all the business ventures, what's the number one habit that you try to practice to help you stay centered in your values and stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new heights?
I would say just being consistent, having somewhat of a similar routine every day, and being around those others that are in the similar path, and let's say not drinking alcohol or going out and doing those things that are outside of your path.
Beautiful. Love it, Joe. Hey, I want to encourage you to keep using your contrarian thinking, right? And the gift to think outside the box and to maybe go against the status quo to help friends, family, clients, partners create and preserve more wealth in cryptocurrency and real estate. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, would you remind them one last time what's the best place for them to find you?
Subscribe at joerobert.com. Anything around investing, robertventures.com. Feel free to reach out. Joe Robert across social media platforms.
Amazing. Thanks, Joe, for being on the show. I also want to thank our listeners, Expert CRE Secrets and Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast listeners for another episode, listening to an episode and being a part of this. Remember, we believe that most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. And you want to have a plan, right? So that when you go to exit, you're not getting hammered with the capital gains tax. Maybe you don't have to move to Puerto Rico, although you could, and get Act 22, which is pretty cool, Joe talked about. But you might even have some estate tax challenges, right? When you move funds outside your taxable estate, you may have a failing 1031 exchange you want a backup plan for. And so you can check out the Deferred Sales Trust as an amazing way to exit and have a plan. We help people close every single week. We're closing another deal across the country, and we want to help you. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Also, look for the new book that's coming out here soon, Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy, and it's the proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling assets of any kind for yourself or for your clients. We have Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank is going to be in the book, and a number of other really smart people, financial advisors, commercial real estate operators, and I got a few chapters in there as well. And please rate, review, subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone that can be inspired by today, and we appreciate you listening.